I never imagined that a simple phone call could make my heart ache and swell with pride at the same time. That morning began like countless others, wrapped in quiet routine and muted expectations. I sat alone at the kitchen table, cradling a mug of coffee that had gone lukewarm, watching sunlight creep lazily across the tiled floor. The phone rang, and I answered without urgency, expecting nothing more than a casual check-in. Instead, my daughter's voice came through trembling. Not with fear, but with a fragile excitement that immediately unsettled me. There was a pause before she spoke, the kind that carries intention and uncertainty all at once. "Mom, I've done something for us," she said softly. Her words were gentle, almost shy, yet they landed with unexpected force. I felt a tightening in my chest, a mixture of anticipation and dread. When she explained that she had booked a trip for the two of us, warmth surged briefly, until she added one detail that changed everything. She had used my pension. The word echoed painfully in my mind. That pension was not just money, it was decades of discipline, a safety net built through sacrifices I never spoke about. Panic rose instantly, colliding with disbelief and fear. I imagined emergencies, future needs, the quiet comfort I had promised myself in old age. I wanted to scold her, to lecture her about responsibility and planning, to protect what little certainty I still controlled. Yet as she nervously laughed on the other end of the line, explaining how long she had planned it, and how much she wanted us to share something meaningful, my anger faltered. Beneath her excitement was love, unfiltered, hopeful and sincere. I realized she wasn't being careless, she was being brave. And before I could overthink it, my voice softened. "All right," I said quietly, swallowing my fear. "Let's make it unforgettable." Once the decision was made, there was no room left for hesitation. The days that followed moved with relentless momentum, sweeping me into preparations I hadn't planned for and emotions I hadn't prepared to feel. My daughter approached everything with remarkable care, researching flights, comparing hotels, and arranging excursions with a precision that surprised me. I watched her work, torn between admiration and unease. Each booking confirmation felt like another reminder of the pension quietly shrinking, yet her attention to detail made it impossible to doubt her intentions. She wasn't chasing luxury, she was building comfort, safety, and shared time. She spoke excitedly about destinations we would explore together, meals we would try, moments she hoped we'd remember years from now. I nodded along, smiling, while my mind replayed numbers and contingencies I couldn't silence. At night, I lay awake questioning whether I had failed somewhere along the way. Had my years of caution taught her responsibility, or only fear of waiting too long? When the day of departure arrived, the airport felt like a threshold. Watching her beam as she handed over our documents, I felt something loosen inside me. Airports are places of movement, of beginnings and endings colliding. As we boarded the plane, I realized this trip wasn't just about travel, it was about time. Time I had postponed, conversations delayed, memories deferred in the name of security. And though anxiety lingered, it was now accompanied by a quiet, growing acceptance. The journey unfolded slowly, almost deliberately, as though urging us to pay attention. We walked through unfamiliar streets, laughed at our mispronunciations, and shared meals that forced us to slow down rather than rush. Even silence felt different, comfortable, reflective. In the evenings, conversations stretched longer than they had in years. She asked questions I hadn't expected, about my past, my regrets, my fears. I answered honestly, surprised by my own openness. I saw her not just as my daughter, but as an adult carrying her own urgency, her own quiet fears. One night, under a sky scattered with stars, she admitted why she had taken the risk with my pension. She was afraid of waiting too long, afraid that time would quietly erase chances we assumed would always be there. That confession struck deeper than any financial worry. I realized then that the money hadn't been taken lightly. It had been spent deliberately as an act of love. Slowly, the tension I carried began to ease. The trip wasn't draining something from me, it was giving something back. By the time we returned home, exhaustion clung to us like a souvenir. I believed the hardest part was over, that the emotional weight of the trip had already peaked. I was wrong. The real reckoning waited patiently in my kitchen. My daughter, still energized, announced she was starving and pulled open the fridge. She froze instantly. Her eyes widened, her breath caught, and then came a scream, raw and unfiltered. I hurried forward, dread settling deep in my stomach. The fridge was chaos incarnate. Spoiled milk, forgotten leftovers, containers long past recognition, and a smell that told a story of neglect I couldn't deny. Shame washed over me. This wasn't just mess, it was evidence of loneliness and survival mode living. When I admitted I had let things slide while saving for the trip, I braced for judgment. Instead, she laughed. Not cruelly, but with understanding. In that moment, something fragile inside me cracked open. Without hesitation, she rolled up her sleeves and declared the fridge salvageable. What followed wasn't just cleaning, it was excavation. Each container uncovered memories, habits, and long-forgotten routines. We laughed, gagged, teased, and told stories as if rediscovering pieces of our lives buried under responsibility. The task became symbolic. She wasn't cleaning a fridge. She was stepping into a part of my life I had quietly neglected. And she did it without judgment. That generosity humbled me more than words could express. As we worked, our conversation deepened. We talked about fear, hers of losing time, mine of losing independence. We talked about money, about how saving can quietly turn into hiding, and how caution can become isolation when carried too far. She admitted she expected my anger, maybe even resentment, but couldn't bear the idea of waiting for the right time. That honesty stayed with me. I realized how often I had postponed joy, believing responsibility demanded it. In truth, responsibility had simply been my shield against vulnerability. When the fridge finally gleamed, the kitchen felt transformed in a way I hadn't anticipated. It wasn't just clean, it felt alive again. Sunlight streamed through the window, bouncing off spotless shelves and casting warm reflections across the room. As if forgiveness itself had taken physical form. We stood side by side in quiet exhaustion, hands damp, arms sore, breathing in the calm that followed effort. In that silence, I felt something profound settle inside me. For years, I had equated order with control and control with safety. Yet here I was, surrounded by clarity born not from discipline, but from shared effort and understanding. I realized how rarely I had allowed anyone to see the unpolished parts of my life. Letting my daughter into that space, into my mess, my habits, my vulnerabilities, felt terrifying at first, but now it felt freeing. The fridge wasn't the only thing restored that afternoon. A sense of balance returned to me, reminding me that strength doesn't come from holding everything together alone, but from trusting someone enough to help when things fall apart. That evening, cooking together felt natural, almost sacred. We moved around the kitchen with an ease that hadn't existed before, passing ingredients, sharing small smiles, laughing at mistakes without embarrassment. The air smelled of fresh food and quiet contentment. As we ate, I noticed how present I felt, how my mind wasn't racing ahead to worries or calculations. For the first time in years, the future didn't feel like a looming burden that needed constant guarding. It felt open, unwritten. I understood then that the trip, the fridge, even the pension had all served the same purpose, forcing me to confront the difference between merely surviving and truly living. The fear hadn't disappeared, but it no longer controlled me. I had gained something steadier, trust. Trust in my daughter's intentions, in our bond, and in the idea that not every risk leads to loss. Some lead to renewal. Later that night, as we sat quietly, my daughter spoke softly. "Mom, maybe next time we save a little together before planning another adventure." Her words weren't an apology, they were an invitation, an offer to share responsibility instead of shouldering it alone. I smiled, feeling a warmth that had nothing to do with relief, and everything to do with connection. Saving together didn't mean protecting myself from loss. It meant planning a future side by side. I realized then that the true gift she had given me wasn't the trip or the memories, but partnership. She wasn't asking me to give up security. She was asking me to redefine it. And for the first time, I understood that security built in isolation is fragile, but security built on trust is enduring. That night, Lying in bed, I replayed everything. The phone call, the fear, the laughter, the mess, the cleaning, the quiet understanding that followed. My pension was lighter, yes, but my life felt fuller than it had in years. I understood a truth I had avoided for far too long. Money preserves comfort, but love preserves meaning. Comfort keeps you safe, but meaning keeps you alive. And meaning, once found, is worth every risk, every moment of uncertainty, and every leap taken in faith. As sleep finally claimed me, I felt at peace, not because everything was secure, but because everything that truly mattered was already here.